Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Westworld season finale. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So finally, we get an answer to what this whole Dolores situation is, and I feel like I was off the mark. I guess I was somewhat right to some small degree. I'm not trying to give myself too much credit, but it seems like Dolores has no body. She's just a mind that she's basically connected to the world. She can see everything. She can write all the narratives, but that's why no one can technically see her. And then we find out she's like, wait, did you leave me the maze? Because the maze is supposed to represent the mapping of the human consciousness or just consciousness in general. And it's like, but Teddy's like, I didn't leave that for you. And she realizes I'm the one that did. On some subconscious level, I created so much in my life. I created Maya. I created Peter. The good and bad in my life, it's all been taking in all the experiences she had. Because it was almost and them showing Maya being okay, which one? Make a choice, the white or the black. And I was like, oh, that's funny because it's she has to choose between good and evil. But I'm like, it was already meta to begin with. Now you're like, oh, there was an even high, it's like 40 chess, dude. It's like there was an even higher level of metaphorism, not even metaphor, well, yes, metaphorism, but even meta-ness that you didn't even really grasp at the time. Now you have an extra layer of the meta-ness of that choice because she has to remember the good and the bad, and she presented all these different points in her life, whether it's the Peter situation, whether it's the Maya situation, and obviously even Teddy. The moment she found out she created Maya, I was like, she created Teddy too, because I'm like, that answers the biggest question I have. Is how did Teddy get out of the Sublime? I was like, because I was wondering if this was in the Sublime or something, or because I was like, it didn't seem like Bernard took him out. He didn't seem like he took anyone out. That's why she created Teddy based on how she remembered him. So that's what this was. It was about pulling and taking all the stuff that kind of made up Dolores, the good, the bad, and just kind of representing it, because she's forgotten a lot of who she was. So on some subconscious level, she wanted to bring back these elements that made up who she was in the manifestation of kind of the good inside of her being Maya, the bad inside of her being represented in the form of Peter. What's also interesting too, because the fact is that she made Maya in her head. Maya was a victim of, that must mean, because I kept being why haven't we gotten anything about Maya? And with all the dead bodies around, I was like, oh man, Maya must have gotten it. It's nope, Maya never existed. So was there ever a real Maya? But I'm assuming that the fact is the way they're handling it is there never really was a Maya. It was just someone she constructed. But the fact is she gave that Maya a backstory about hey, her parents were killed and she remembers the flies and everything. So it kind of was some level of Dolores, giving this character the backstory to what she created, that she was a part of, because yes, she didn't directly make the flies. She writes the narrative, so that kind of involves her, but also a version of herself, Charlotte, made the flies and stuff. So it kind of still makes her responsible. So I thought that was really interesting. Once again, it's that side of science fiction that can get super heady when you think about it a lot. But I thought that was such an interesting representation. And all the while this is happening, Charlotte's still alive. And I think that's interesting. Out of anyone that could have survived, she did. But Bernard saw that coming. I bet you there are probably versions of that reality where maybe William aimed a little too one way and ended up killing her. William seemed like he was ready for her to come back, so he probably on purpose killed Maeve, but wanted Charlotte alive to see what happened. He wanted her to eventually participate in the game, which I do appreciate. We get some familiar faces. We get Jonathan Tucker. We get Stephen Ogden. He's just yeah. I'm kind of very good at killing these humans. Bam! Got killed. I was like, wow. Okay. So I just thought that was interesting. I was like, oh yeah, all that bolstering you were doing, and you got cut down. So, because obviously it's a free-for-all. It's not just, it's survival of the fittest all around, not just the humans, but obviously the humans are even hunting down hosts. So he was all about it because he's like, yeah, I'm all about this game and stuff. And I love, there's that, there's almost this level of, it's legitimately a battle royale, which is so meta considering how big battle royales have been for the past couple years and stuff like that. So them kind of introducing that in, granted, battle royales have been a thing forever. They've always, we may not have always had the term battle royale. They specifically use that because I've never read the manga, I've never even seen the movie, but people always go back to battle royale, the manga and movie to kind of represent using that specific wording and phrasing for it. But like I said, it's just interesting, just from the perspective of like battle royales have been like pretty big like in the past couple years, like video game wise and stuff like that. So to kind of implement that in this regard, obviously like humankind on a large, as an entire species level of battle royale, and it's just like right, and there's almost like this, almost like this predator prey element to it all, and kind of alluding to, I've not seen the movie, but kind of alluding to like, the most recent Predator movie, Prey, that kind of hierarchy of just like, oh, this person killed this person, and then you saw that person immediately get killed off by someone else, and then finally the last person standing was the sniper. But I was like, because I kept being like, oh, is it gonna be William? I was like, but it never ended up being William. I knew he's gonna pop up eventually, but he kills the sniper, and I love there's almost a meta-ness to it, because video game wise it's like, this camping son of a bitch, it's like, the rules. So puts him down and moseys on along. At the same time, Charlotte is alive, like her unit didn't get destroyed, so repairing herself, making herself stronger than ever, and she ends up finding Bernard's message, and it seems the message he was recording was specifically made for her. And in that moment, she ends up pulling up Dolores, and because she was and to sit her on the floor, and I was like, when she was all said and done, the floor had a design of the maze. I was like, was the floor already like that, or did it just happen to kind of take that shape because like some of the cracks kind of formed, and I didn't know whether that was like on purpose or whether it was already like that maze simple, and it's just like, right, there's just extra cracks on it from her busting the cement, because that's where Dolores has been the entire time without her body. So I guess after everything was all said and done, Charlotte must have grabbed her pearl, like, at the end of season 3, and sat it this entire time, using, and it's just interesting that, I guess maybe that's almost supposed to be symbolic of the fact is that regardless of her getting revenge against Dolores, she still couldn't let Dolores go, so she kept her around, and maybe kind of putting her in this position was just kind of like her playing God and stuff. Even Bernard saying like, right, this isn't the world you wanted to create, but it is the world you created regardless. You basically help set a lot of this motion. It's like, once again, like, William is based around your code, which he later on says like, yeah, but you say that, but it's like, no, I'm William. Like, his instincts and everything about him runs through me. He's like, if anything, I'm a better version of William than he ever could be, which Charlotte was like, you're not. He's like, well, are you really too blind? Can you even really tell, like, can you even distinguish between the two, is kind of what he was kind of alluding to. But she's doing her thing, and she ends up running into Clementine, which Clementine's story is so interesting, because I think you can make the argument about Clementine herself that she even says, like, right, her thing has always been, like, helping people. Like, that's always been a part of her programming, and she's always kind of been, like, brought along to help people. And I think, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, and maybe I kind of missed the point of it, but it felt like it was like, for the first time in forever, Clementine was making her own choices. She wasn't doing something because someone else wanted her to. She was going to do it. It's like, oh, I'm going to go where the outliers are. That way I can hide from a place where you can't find me, nor William. It's like, well, you think the outliers are going to accept you? It's like, oh, who said anything about cohabitating? It's like, nah, fuck that. I'm about to take that over. So, at the same time, Caleb, Stubbs, and Frankie are making their way through the city, all past the bloodbath. But Stubbs can tell, like, Caleb's not going to make it, because it's like, yeah, there's never been any successful transferring of the human consciousness into a host body. It's the mind, it's the bodies can never handle the mind. But for Caleb, all he needs to do is get his daughter to, like, the harbor, like, get her out. That's all he needs. He'll hold on for that long, so. And obviously, she's like, you can ask me. And Kayla's like, what? She's like, ask me what you've been wanting to ask about mom. It's like, it was cancer. She held on for as long as she could. But she's like, we kind of owe it all to mom. Mom was amazing. The fact is that she put it all together. Like, she continued her fight. And she's like, none of the outliers would be here right now if it wasn't for mom going around doing what she did. So. And it is sad that Caleb did never get to see her one last time, because for him it's like, right, for me it feels like it's only been a couple days since I was like reading to you, and singing that song to you to sleep to, which I think is so interesting, that specific use of that song, Que sera, sera, whatever will be, the future is not ours to see. Just because, obviously, like, that song's kind of pretty recently in my head a lot, because it's the opening, they use that as the theme song from the show From, which I highly recommend. If you've never seen the show From, you should do that. It's coming back for a second season. It's on Epix. I don't know if there's anywhere else you can find. I'm sure you could, like, rent it or, like, buy it digitally or something like that. But Epix is, like, the only other place I wouldn't surmise it'd be anywhere else. Like, I'm sure you can buy it, like, or rent it anywhere else, but like Epix is where you watch it. Side note, it's just that song, like, that's like, I've heard the song before, but now I just purely associate with the show From. So now, because of that, just hearing it makes me like, I was like, oh, it kind of makes me go like, man, I'm so pumped for season 2 of that. But regardless, Clementine finding them and killing Stubbs, you're like, oh, poor. I was like, because I kept being like, okay, come on, Stubbs, you're gonna be okay. Nope. I was like, oh, is he dead? I was like, wow, he went out like that. To be fair, I should have figured as much, because Stubbs, he was like, oh, I survived. I didn't die. It's like, nope, the end result still came to be. And it was Clementine that ended up putting you down. So she's trying to find out where the Outliers' hideout is, but Frankie wasn't about to give her that information. So she ends up going toe-to-toe with Caleb. And it's like, and she was about to kill him. It's like, right, none of your predecessors would have made it this far. They would have fallen apart long before now. And before she could, like, sap his neck or whatever, Frankie's like, I lied. I still have one more bullet. Bam! I was like, damn. You kind of feel bad after everything that Clementine... I mean, I feel like Clementine never wins. It's kind of my point. Like, it just feels like she's always kind of caught up in someone else's game. And I mean, and maybe it's like I said, poetic. And once again, maybe I'm reading too much into it. But the fact is, she kind of went out on her own terms. It's like, well, you kind of went out on dickish terms, but it's kind of like, it's do or die, it's kill or be killed type of situation. So it makes a lot of sense. But in the end, she kind of went out on her own terms. And I think she's always wanted that. She's always been someone else's pawn. She's always been of use to someone else. Like, she can never just 100% be herself. I mean, just when she tried to take an opportunity for that, William/Charlotte ended up tracking her down. So that all went down. So the two of them are trying to make it on their own. Caleb and Frankie, and they do eventually make it, but Caleb has to say goodbye. She's like, no, come on, like, you have more fighting. He's like, no, I don't. Your dad died a long time ago, and basically all he is remnants of it. And it's like, the fact is, I've kind of lived past what I was supposed to, and the fact is, I got to do what so many parents are very not always lucky and able to do, and that's watch see their child grow up. And he's seen the woman that she's become, and he wants to make sure she's okay, give her a fighting chance to survive. This was his last duty as a father. It's the last thing he could do is see her off, send her off. If that was the last thing he was going to do, that's what he wanted it to be, So I thought that was kind of a beautiful thing. The fact is, they even had this amount of time that he got to see her and she got to see him one last time. She actually got to say goodbye, because for 23 years, she never got to really know what happened to her dad. She never got a chance to say goodbye, at least now. Doesn't make it any better, but she at least got to tell him goodbye. Some version of him, So at the same time all this is going down, Charlotte and William go toe-to-toe in their game, because his plan isn't just stopping with this world. He's annihilating this world, doing what he's doing, because it's like, yeah, our kind, their kind, we need to burn it all to the ground. He plans on doing the same thing to the Sublime, because despite everything, to being a part of Charlotte, being a part of Dolores, he still played the role of William for so long that it's like, right, of course I would be William. Like, I played this role. I am him. I was supposed to be him. So now that I am playing the role, like, why are you so shocked that I'm leaning into, because I am William first and foremost. That is who I am. I play the role because that's what I am. It's ingrained in me. And so he believes, William's always been very pessimistic with this whole situation, which, once again, I think is so fucked up considering not saying you were the only one, but dude, you've been the root cause of a lot of shit in this universe, in this series. So it's like, it's almost hypocritical for him to be the one that kind of says, like, they're the worst and stuff like that. To be fair, he's coming from the perspective of, I'm kind of a shitty human being. Human beings in general, we're shitty. So, of course, our creations would be shitty. That they themselves, talking from the perspective of, we are basically, once again, reflections of our creators. So they were shitty. Like, of course, we would, apple doesn't fall too far from the tree in this regard. Like, we took on so much of the humans' filth and their shit. And so seeing the worst in humanity and just seeing the worst in them, not giving them a chance. Because Charlotte's like, you don't know if the Sublime, like, the fact is, you don't know what worlds they're building. But he's like, no, like, if they were built by human hands, which we were, then everything's going to go to shit like it did here. Believing the worst in everything. And ultimately, Charlotte, plays back that final message from Bernard. What we found out, what he left for her here was a gun to kill William. And for her, it was like her giving Dolores a chance, a final test to determine the new world. So she ends up killing William and crushing his pearls so that there's no chance of him coming back. And the fact is that everything she wanted, what she built, and finally shedding her skin. Like, the last thing she does, obviously, is she keeps the face on. I'd assume she'd be able to remove that, but maybe, yeah, I'm sure you could, but either way, I guess this is one last time wanting to kind of be with that face. Like, she even took off the sleeves, because she wanted to keep the scars, because she wanted to remember her past, but it's like, right, the world I wanted is gone, and I'm leaving this up to Dolores. It's up to her to decide what happens next. Like, I made my choices and this world ended up the way it did. So time for you to make yours. So, and she ends up crushing her own pearl. So it's like, right, it's time for the past to die, for the new world to move forward. Like, we all have to go. This world is doomed. There's no saving it. So now Dolores, now realizing once again that Teddy isn't really Teddy, he's just the way she remembers him, and the new world going forward, what it's going to be like, because they end up closing the Sublime so that no one could get there, so whatever's happening in this world doesn't affect that world. Let the Sublime stay where the Sublime is. That's how I am interpreting that, but maybe that's not how that's... Or maybe that's supposed to imply, like, that is her in the Sublime doing all of this, kind of running a simulation of sorts, because her final words is, yes, whatever humans are out there, those who've managed to avoid the flies, who've avoided death, maybe they'll survive for a few months or maybe a few years, but eventually all of this species, both host and human alike, even though, like, the humans completely outtrance like the number of, like, host, like, it's by exponent number of humans to host. But she's saying, like, right, these creatures are on their way to extinction. The only way they survive is through being remembered by they only survive as long as the last creature herself remembers them. That's how people and things just never die, as long as you have that memory of them. Because as long as there's something or someone around to remember, you never truly die. You're always there. Because I love that, while she was, being carried around by Charlotte, Dolores sat down with Maya and she's like, yeah, people think they know what the tree is, but it's like they don't. They just kind of see what's on the surface, but not realizing, like, how much is underground, how much is connected. And once again, kind of very much like in the perspective of William can sometimes see like the nastiness of the world. Dolores was the same way too, and then Maya saying the line of, "But I choose to see the beauty in it," and Dolores is like, "Yeah, I think I could get behind that," and Maya be like, I figured you would." So like Maya's kind of that representation of Dolores, the same Dolores who talked to Maeve at the end of season 3, saying that she saw the one who could see the beauty in the world, that side of Dolores. Because even Teddy was like, right, go to our people, like, don't even worry about saving the humans. They're a failure. They don't, like, if you, like, try and help them, you'll just corrupt what we're building in the Sublime. Because he's like, yeah, come find the real me. But for her, it's like, as long as she remembers the good and the bad, a dangerous test, you know, and, it's going to be the one that kind of decides everything, whether or not humanity, whether or not they're worthy of still existing and stuff. She's going to perform one final test that's not going. It's dangerous and it could go wrong, but as she says, one more loop around the bend, and basically she ends up. Because I've been making this whole meta point of like, oh yeah, Westworld got rebooted. It kind of did from like a soft reboot perspective. It seems like this is a straight up, which I guess in that regard, it almost makes sense with, you know, a machine, you know, kind of rebooting itself and still carrying over some of the data from its previous incarnations. And that's the case with Dolores. She remembers everything and everyone, so she's rebooting Westworld as a test to see what choices humanity makes going forward. A final test to see what they end up doing. So we're rewinding all the way back. So we're rebooting, like, this is Westworld 2.0 to some extent, but it's like the final version. It's like, this is the end-all, be-all, the end game of it all, which I thought was interesting because I know, at least I think Jonathan and Lisa... Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, I think I want to say it was during season 3 when the show got renewed for a 4th season. They were saying like, oh, there are plans to make, they had at least like a 6-season plan. The way they set this up, it almost feels like the next season could be the final season, the way this kind of set up, like this is the end all be all. But it's like, yeah, it's kind of like the reboot. And so Dolores is kind of playing that God role again, but it's like, we're probably going to see every character we've ever known. Like, so any characters that are dead will come back in some fashion. And it's just about, right, taking everything that we've learned and kind of seeing whether or not things can turn out better this time around. And it's like, right, one final test to see if they're at all, like, if humanity's all at all worth saving. You know, it's like remembering the good, the bad, you know, the best of humanity, the worst of humanity, because Dolores has experienced it all. So that's how we're going to get back characters like Bernard and Maeve, because it's like, and even Caleb, maybe. It's like, right, these are going to, I mean, that probably also means, I don't know, like, how far that's going to stretch back, because, like, also, it wouldn't include Frankie, because Frankie she didn't get to know Frankie, but she got to know Caleb, so... But once again, the reboot we're seeing at the very end is like OG Westworld from the first season. So, and like I said, whether this is like a simulation she's running in this world, and they're eventually going to like build back up, like see whether or not humanity, like run a final test, a large scale simulation to determine whether or not humanity. And Dolores being that person is the right person, because you don't want it to be a William who assumes the worst. You want a Dolores who can see all sides of it, but is willing and able to see the beauty in it as well. You know, kind of having at least some form of objectivity, but also is open a lot more than someone like William or even Charlotte would be. So either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what that kind of manifests itself as. Like I said, whether or not this is all a simulation still happening in that world, or whether this is all happening in the Sublime, or, you know, we'll probably get a clearer answer. Like, they kept that ambiguous because you just see the Sublime closing, but I don't know if that's supposed to be like, oh, that... No, I think it is, yeah, because I'm being stupid. It's obviously in the Sublime because that's the whole point, because this world is completely doomed, so... And the Sublime allows you to do so much. You could create whatever world you want to, so... And so, once again, Dolores is able to do what she wants to and kind of run this from the very beginning. So, I just looked it up. At the time of me recording this, HBO hasn't confirmed whether or not the show is coming back for a 5th season. I hope it is. And it was also, I was reading some stuff confirming what I'd heard. Like, there were previous reports of, like, the show having at least a 6th season plan. But it does, this finale in particular hints that, like, this might be a 5 and done. You know, so either way, it sets up a really interesting, it's very, you know, if you've seen Once Upon a Time, it kind of reminds me of that. At least, I hope it, you know, I mean, once again, hopefully it does come back for, at the very least, it gets that final season, if it ends up being a final season, which, once again, this finale makes it seem like it. But like a Once Upon a Time, that finale, that final season became a final season just because the show didn't get renewed. At least going into it, kind of doing a similar thing. Spoilers, like the final season of Once Upon a Time is kind of a large-scale soft reboot to some extent. So I feel like, you know, there's an interesting parallel you can make between the two, so I'd be so curious to see what characters come back and, you know, similar roles, because I'm sure we're going to see Maeve the way we first saw Maeve, and maybe Bernard's back to being Arnold. Characters we haven't seen in such a long time returning. I'm curious, well, would she make any people? Like, you know, I mean, to be fair, she's making everyone from her memory, so it's like, yeah. Because she was the first of she was the first of the hosts, so it makes sense that she, out of anyone, would be the one that, you know, she had the most encounters with people. She saw, once again, every aspect of humanity, once again, in their best, in their worst, somewhere in the middle. Same thing for the host and everything, too, so I do hope we do get a 5th season, which, like I said, seems like they're setting up to be the final, but I'm so excited to see where things go. You know, I hope, fingers crossed, hoping that we do get an announcement soon about a season 5, so. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.